So this video is about a very interesting comparison between a computer program and the program of life. For example, a human body, right? I would say it is very wrong to compare between a computer program and a human body because each cell of your body is like a tiny computer. It's running a program called the DNA. So the correct comparison would be a computer program and a cell. And if this is the case, then who the fuck are you, right? I mean, who the hell are you? So you are like this giant, internet, right? Where each of your cell is communicating with each other through nerve impulses, which are electrical signals, or chemical signals, which are like hormones and all that. So that's the real comparison: a cell and a computer, and you are this giant network. So hold on and watch this video to the end because it's gonna get a lot of technical, but it's gonna be very interesting. Anyway, so what is exactly a computer program? I mean, if you look at the computer program, I mean, it's just a binary file with a bunch of ones and zeros, right? It's a long sequence of bits, ones and zeros. And the meaning of each bit is a physical representation of the charge state of the memory cells, in the hard disk, right? So it's a long sequence of ones and zeros. Similarly, the DNA is a very long sequence of four molecules. They are adenine, guanine, cytosine, and thymine, also known as nitrogenous bases. So if we compare the sizes of a computer program with the DNA, a typical 1 GB computer program is like, it has 8 billion bits. And compare that with the human DNA. So the total size of the human DNA is 3 billion base pairs. So base pairs is nothing but this nitrogenous bases, ATCG. So this ATCG, these molecules align like in a sequence, right? Just like a computer program is a sequence of ones and zeros, a DNA is a sequence of like ATCGs and all that, these four, nitrogenous bases. Now, how does a computer program run? I mean, you have your program in your hard disk, but when you're loading, when you launch the program, a part of that program is copied into the RAM. And the RAM is the place where it is actually executed, right? And the part of the program that actually lives in the RAM is called the working set. Similarly, not the entire DNA is actually executed all the time. A part of the DNA called the gene is actually copied into something called a messenger RNA. That messenger RNA is copied from the nucleus, brought to the cytoplasm called in a place called endoplasmic reticulum, and this is where it is being executed. If I ask you what is the most important part of a computer, you would tell me it's the CPU, right? Because it's the CPU that is actually executing the code, which is there in the program. Now, we don't really hear about the CPU of the cell, which is actually responsible for execution of this DNA, whatever code is. But there is something called ribosome, okay? This is my favorite part of the cell. So ribosome is the machine in the cell that is responsible for basically reading the code of the messenger RNA, which has been just now brought to the cytoplasm, and executing the code. Now, how this data is read? Like if you look at the computer, you probably know that there are different types of computer, right? 32-bit, 64-bit. If you have a 32-bit computer, then the CPU is going to read 32 bits of data at a time per instruction cycle. It's going to put that data into its instruction register. It's going to decode and all that. It's going to linearly, bring 32 bits of data at a time. Similarly, the ribosome, which is very similar to the CPU of the cell, it's going to read 3 nitrogenous bases at a time. So 3, 3, 3, 3, right? In this sequence, and this sequence is also called codon. Just like we have something called word size, like 32-bit is the word size of the computer, right? If you have a 32-bit computer, the word size of the program of life, all life that you see around is 3 nitrogenous bases at a time. Anyway, so what does this CPU actually do inside a computer? What the hell is it actually doing, right? So, okay, we understand that it's basically reading 32 bits of data, but then what? So the thing is, the CPU has a small memory in it. It's called EEPROM, electrically erasable programmable read-only memory. So basically what it does is that it reads the 32-bit of data, it decodes it, it knows what to do, so it basically and then it changes the control lines of the computer. So there are basically two types of lines in the computer, basically communication lines, data lines and control lines. So data lines are through which actual data flows, and control lines are basically that controls data, how data is going to flow from one part of the computer to the other part. And the control lines are almost entirely controlled by the CPU. So based on the instruction, the CPU is going to decide what's going to happen. So whether two numbers are going to be added or subtracted, or data is going to be moved from one place to another. So this is how each cycle, new data is going to be, new instruction is going to be read by the CPU, and the computer is going to change its state from one state to another, and this is how it's going to, progress. Anyway, similarly, in a cell, the ribosome is going to read three chunk of this nitrogenous bases, also known as codon. It's going to read that. It's going to decode it. Now, how it's going to decode? There's another player called tRNA. I mean, forget about it. There's another player basically who's going to work with the ribosome, and it's going to bring a particular amino acid. Now, what is an amino acid? So amino acids are like the building blocks of proteins. Okay, so as the ribosome is reading this, piece by piece, it's going to be joining amino acids together, in a long chain. And why is it important? Because this long chain of amino acid is nothing but a protein. Now, you may know that proteins are so much essential to life in general, because proteins are nothing but, they are the building blocks of our body. I mean, they make so many, like for example, we have collagen fibers in our tissues, which is nothing but protein, right? And we also have, so many things going on, like metabolic processes going on inside the cell, like hormones and enzymes. Those are nothing but proteins. So there are a bunch of different types of protein in our body. Not only our body, I mean every life on this planet. And this production of protein is actually controlled by this code, okay? And so basically the code is responsible for making of different proteins, and those proteins are then responsible for controlling the physiological processes that happen inside a life form, right? Okay, so another interesting comparison is the speed of execution. For example, the laptop that I'm currently working on it has a speed of around 3 gigahertz, which roughly is about 3 billion instructions per second. I mean, it's mind-blowing, right? If you really think about it, in a single second, the CPU is executing code 3 billion times. Fuck. Anyway, so what is the speed of execution of a ribosome in a cell? I mean, ribosomes are much slower. I mean, they usually work like 1 amino acid per second. I mean, something around that. But do you know how many ribosomes are present in a cell? More than million. I mean, millions and millions of ribosomes are present. So even if a single ribosome is slower, it doesn't matter. There are millions of them, and they're doing parallelly. The cell is master of parallel programming. I mean, how many parallel CPUs are there in a computer? I mean, maybe 4, 8, 12, 16, whatever. But there are millions of ribosomes in a fucking single cell. Every time I think about it, my mind just goes nuts. Anyway, another important feature of a computer is that it can receive information from the outside environment. For example, you press a button on a keyboard, so the computer can actually take that information and change its execution, change the way it is executing the code, and it can receive that information, right? The computer can get information from the internet, it can get information from the mouse and all that, right? So in a similar way, each cell of your body, it has a membrane, right? It's like a ball. It has a membrane, and it is in a space of tissue. And there is this. It's not like that each cell of your body is connected to another cell tightly. It's not a tightly packed space. I mean, there are spaces in between the cells. It's called interstitium, and the cell membrane has a special type of proteins called receptor proteins, and that can basically sense the outside environment. For example, when your blood glucose goes high, I mean, we all know about this thing called insulin, right? So when insulin is released by the pancreas, and insulin reaches one of the, let's say the liver cell, and it binds to those receptor proteins on the cell, and it tells the cell to allow more glucose to get into the cell from the outside environment, right? So it's the insulin acts like a external message to the cell. And this is just one example. I mean, cells know, I mean, they have mechanisms to sense the outside world and change their behavior, change their programming, because everything that is happening in the cell is through the execution of the code in the DNA, and it can change its programming based on what's happening outside the environment. So unbelievable, right? So thank you for watching, you giant network of communicating cells.